Admiral Robert Wilson stood at the window of his office at NASA Command, staring at the stars. The coffee in his hand had gone cold hours ago, forgotten after the urgent message that changed everything. After 30 years in service, he thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. "Sir," his assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Dr. Carter is here with the final analysis." The door opened, and Dr. Susan Carter rushed in, her blonde hair messy from running her hands through it too many times. She carried a tablet that displayed waves of data he couldn't understand. "It's confirmed, sir," she said, her voice shaking with excitement. "The signal isn't random. It's a conversation between two alien vessels, and they're talking about us." Wilson set down his coffee. "What exactly are they saying?" "Most of it is in code, but we cracked enough to know this. They're discussing the maintenance of something called the barrier. They mentioned Earth specifically." She paused, her face darkening. "Sir, they're keeping us trapped in our solar system." Wilson walked to the large screen on his wall and pressed a button. The image of Earth's first battleship, the U.S. Frontier, appeared. It was nearly complete in its orbital dock, a massive vessel that had consumed 20 years of secret construction and more resources than any other project in human history. "How long have they been containing us?" he asked. "Based on the signal patterns, at least 300 years. They've been watching us, studying us. Every failed deep space mission, every probe that mysteriously stopped working beyond a certain point. It was them." Wilson's jaw tightened. The Frontier had been built because some had suspected alien life might not be friendly. They never imagined they were already prisoners. The next hours passed in a blur. Wilson called an emergency meeting with the Joint Chiefs. Military bases worldwide went on high alert. The Frontier's completion schedule was accelerated. In the ship's orbital dock, crews worked around the clock. The massive battleship was a marvel of human engineering, 1 mile long, powered by experimental quantum drives, armed with both energy weapons and kinetic rail guns. They had built it to defend Earth. Now it would be their key to freedom. Captain Laura Peterson was appointed as the Frontier's commander. Wilson watched from his office as she gave her first speech to the crew of 1,500. "For centuries, humanity has looked to the stars and dreamed," she said, her voice carrying across the assembly hall. "We never knew those stars were behind bars. Today, we learn the truth. Today, we break free." The crew cheered, but Wilson noticed the fear in some of their eyes. They had trained for space combat, but facing an enemy that had contained humanity for centuries. That was different. 3 days later, Wilson stood in mission control as the Frontier prepared for launch. The massive ship's engines hummed to life. Across the world, people watched on their screens, thinking this was just humanity's first military venture into space. They didn't know the truth. Not yet. "Sir," Dr. Carter said, studying her readings, "we're detecting movement at the edge of the solar system. Large objects, moving fast." Wilson picked up his secure phone. "Captain Peterson, you have new orders. This isn't just a test run anymore. Find that barrier. Break it down. Show them humanity won't be caged." As the Frontier's engines flared to life, Wilson watched the massive ship rise from its dock. They had built it to protect Earth from possible threats. Instead, it would become humanity's declaration of independence to a galaxy that had imprisoned them. The mission clock started counting down. Humanity's first battleship was about to enter space, and the galaxy would never be the same. Lieutenant Amy Foster's hands flew over her sensor station aboard the U.S. Frontier. Something wasn't right with the readings. As they approached the edge of the solar system, space itself seemed to ripple. "Captain Peterson," she called out, "I'm detecting energy patterns at coordinates 227 Mark IV. They're moving." The bridge crew fell silent. On the main screen, stars flickered like candles in the wind. Then they saw it, a faint, shimmering wall stretching as far as their instruments could detect. "Full stop," Captain Peterson ordered. "Chief Martinez, analysis." Linda Martinez, the ship's engineer, studied her readings. It's some kind of quantum barrier, Captain. The aliens didn't just watch us. They built a cage around our entire solar system. The captain's face hardened. Can we break through? Our quantum drives might do it, Martins replied. But we've never tested them at full power. Could tear the ship apart. Before Peterson could respond, new alerts blared. 3 sleek vessels appeared on the far side of the barrier, their designs unlike anything humans had seen before. A transmission came through in perfect English. Human vessel, return to your designated space immediately. This is your only warning. Captain Peterson stood from her chair. This is Captain Laura Peterson of the U.S. Frontier. By whose authority are we being contained? By order of the Zaxian Federation. For the safety of civilized space. Your species is deemed too aggressive for unrestricted travel. Foster watched as the captain's knuckles turned white on her armrest. Too aggressive? You've imprisoned an entire species without trial or representation. Now who's being aggressive? She turned to Martinez. Power up the quantum drives. Full strength. Captain, Martins warned. This cooled. Do it. The Frontier's engines began to hum, building to a roar that vibrated through the hull. The barrier ahead shimmered more intensely. Zaxian vessels powering weapons, Foster reported. Shields up, Peterson commanded. All hands, brace for breakthrough. The quantum drives screamed as reality bent around them. Foster's instruments went crazy, showing readings that shouldn't be possible. The barrier stretched like rubber, trying to hold them back. Then, with a flash that blinded their sensors, it broke. The Frontier burst through into open space. Behind them, alarms blared as Zaxian ships opened fire. Return fire, Peterson ordered. Show them how aggressive we can be when threatened. The Frontier's rail guns roared to life, launching projectiles at near-light speed. The Zaxians, expecting energy weapons, were caught completely off guard. Their shields, designed to deflect plasma and lasers, did nothing against solid tungsten rounds. One Zaxian ship spun away, crippled. Another retreated. The third kept firing until a precisely aimed shot from the Frontier disabled its engines. Open a channel to Earth, Peterson commanded. They need to know what's happening. And send a message to that disabled Zaxian ship. Tell them we're coming aboard. It's time we had a proper conversation about humanity's place in the galaxy. Foster looked at her sensor readings again. With the barrier broken, she could see further into space than any human ever had. There were worlds out there, thousands of them. And now, finally, they were within reach. Captain, she said quietly, I'm detecting similar barriers around other star systems. We're not the only ones they've imprisoned. Peterson nodded grimly. Then it seems we have work to do. Humanity didn't build its first battleship just to sit quietly in its cage. Let's show the galaxy what happens when you try to chain the human spirit. Commander David Chen watched from the Frontier's tactical station as the Zaxian fleet warped into the Proxima Centauri system. 30 ships against 1. Not great odds, but humanity had faced worse. They're charging weapons, he reported to Captain Peterson. These aren't patrol ships like before. These are real warships. The Frontier hung in space near Proxima's red dwarf star. They'd come here looking for other imprisoned civilizations. Instead, they'd found an angry alien armada. All hands to battle stations. Peterson's voice echoed through the ship. Mr. Chen, show them what those new shield modifications can do. The Zaxian fleet opened fire. Streams of plasma and energy beams lit up space, but Chief Engineer Martinez's upgrades held. The attack splashed harmlessly against the Frontier's shields. Return fire, Chen ordered. All rail guns, pattern delta. The Frontier's guns roared. Tungsten rounds accelerated to near-light speed tore through the enemy formation. The Zaxians hadn't expected such primitive weapons. Their shields, designed for energy weapons, might as well have been tissue paper. 3 enemy ships disabled, Chen reported. They're adjusting their shields. Martinez's voice came over the comm. "Captain, I've analyzed their shield modifications. They're trying to create magnetic fields to deflect our rounds, but they can't cover all angles. If we time our shots right." "Do it," Peterson ordered. Chen's fingers danced across his console, coordinating with Martinez. The Frontier's rail guns fired in precise sequences, finding gaps in the enemy shields. 2 more Zaxian ships spun away, crippled. But the aliens were learning. Their remaining ships spread out, making targeting harder. New weapons powered up on their hulls. "Incoming fire," Chen shouted. "Different energy signature." The first hit rocked the Frontier. Shield strength dropped by 20%. "Get those shields back up," Peterson commanded. Martinez worked furiously in engineering. "Rerouting power now." "Captain, I have an idea." "They're new weapons. They're using quantum resonance. If we time our drive pulses right." "Make it happen," Peterson said. The next Zaxian blast hit just as Martinez activated her modifications. Instead of damaging the shields, the energy was absorbed and redirected. The Frontier's quantum drives hummed louder. "Fire everything," Peterson ordered. Chen unleashed hell. Rail guns thundered. The absorbed energy from the Zaxian weapons added extra punch to each shot. Ships exploded across space as perfectly timed rounds found their marks. The remaining Zaxian vessels retreated, jumping away to safety. The battle was over. "Damage report," Peterson called out. "Shields at 60%, Chen reported. "Minor hull damage on decks 4 and 7. But Martinez's modifications worked perfectly. We're still in the fight." "Good," Peterson said, "because this was just the beginning. Send word to Earth. Tell them the Frontier fought its first real battle. Tell them we won." Chen looked at his tactical display. The Zaxians would be back, probably with even bigger ships. But now they knew humanity wasn't just another primitive species to be caged. They were a force to be reckoned with. And somewhere out there, other imprisoned civilizations were waiting to be freed. The real war was just beginning. Captain Rachel Morgan never thought she'd be humanity's first real diplomat to alien species. Yet here she stood on the bridge of the Frontier, facing the holographic image of First Speaker Erix of the Aldarian Republic. The alien leader's crystalline form shimmered as he spoke. "You broke through their barrier. Impossible. The Zaxians have contained us for millennia." "Not impossible," Morgan replied. "Just difficult. And we're offering to help you do the same." The Aldarians had been trapped even longer than humans. Their system, rich in resources, had been marked as too valuable for independent control by the Zaxian Federation. "Why would you help us?" Erix asked. "You don't know our species." Morgan smiled. "Because imprisonment is wrong, no matter who it happens to. We found records on that Zaxian ship we captured. There are 15 other species trapped like we were. Like you are." Security Chief Brian Rogers stood beside her, watching the aliens' reactions. After years of training to fight extraterrestrials, he never expected to be planning an alliance with them. "The Zaxians will respond with force," Erix warned. "They always do." "Let them come," Rogers said. "We've beaten them twice already. Their energy weapons can't handle our kinetic weapons. Their shields can't stop our rail guns." Morgan shot him a look. Diplomacy needed a softer touch. "What we mean is, together we stand a better chance. Your people understand crystal-based technology better than anyone, combined with our military innovations. A liberation alliance," Erix finished. His crystalline form pulsed with new colors. Others would join. The Nexeri have been waiting for a chance to break free. The Voltarians too. More holograms appeared as Erix connected with other imprisoned species. Morgan saw beings of pure energy, creatures that looked like living metal, and some she couldn't even describe. All trapped, all wanting freedom. "The Zaxians told everyone we were savages," Morgan said to the gathered holograms. "They said we were quarantined for being too aggressive. But look what they did. They built prisons around entire solar systems. They enslaved species for their resources. Who are the real savages? One by one, the alien leaders pledged their support. Ships would be built in secret. Technologies would be shared. The frontier wouldn't fight alone anymore. The Zaxians never imagined we'd work together, Eric said. They thought keeping us separated would keep us weak. Morgan nodded. Instead, they gave us all something in common, a shared enemy, a shared cause. As the alien leaders discussed strategy, Rogers leaned close to Morgan. Think this will work? A fleet made up of different species, different technologies. It has to, she replied. Because if we fail, they'll make sure nobody ever breaks free again. The meeting ended with a plan. The Liberation Alliance was born. The frontier would lead the first coordinated strike against Zaxian control ships. Morgan looked at the star map showing all the imprisoned systems. Soon, those barriers would fall. The galaxy would be free. And it all started because humanity refused to stay in its cage. Strategic Officer Kevin Hayes stood before the combined fleet of the Liberation Alliance. Through the frontier's viewing window, he saw ships of every shape and size. Crystalline Aldarian vessels, energy-form Nexari crafts, and the metallic hulls of Voltarian warships, all following the lead of one human battleship. The plan is simple. He addressed the alien commanders through the holographic interface. The Zaxians maintain control ships at the center of each barrier network. Take out those ships, the barriers fall. The frontier's tactical display showed their targets. 5 Zaxian control centers, each guarding 3 imprisoned systems. They would attack all 5 simultaneously. Humanity's railgun technology will be our primary weapon, Hayes continued. We've helped outfit each of your ships with similar systems. The Zaxians won't expect physical weapons from any of us. The Aldarian commander's crystal form sparkled as he spoke. Our ships have been modified to generate sensor ghosts. They won't know our true numbers until it's too late. A Voltarian added, our metal-formed ships can absorb their energy weapons and redirect the power to our new kinetic weapons. Hayes nodded. This was why the plan would work. Each species brought something unique, something the Zaxians had never faced before. The attack began at precisely planned moments. The frontier led the largest group, targeting the central control station. Aldarian ships created hundreds of false signals, confusing Zaxian sensors. Nexari vessels phased through enemy fire like ghosts, getting close enough to disable shield generators. Then the rain of tungsten began. Rail guns from every Liberation ship opened fire. The Zaxian shields, designed for energy weapons, proved useless against the physical onslaught. Control ships exploded one after another. Barriers are failing. Lieutenant Foster shouted from her sensor station. System-wide collapse in all target areas. Hayes watched as 15 star systems were freed in a single coordinated strike. On the tactical display, imprisoned species ships began pouring out of their formerly caged systems, joining the Liberation fleet. But the Zaxians weren't finished. A massive fleet emerged from hyperspace, their main battle group led by their flagship. All ships, form up, Hayes commanded. The real fight is about to begin. Show them what happens when you free the species they thought they had safely locked away. The combined fleet moved into attack formation, the frontier at its head. Humanity's first battleship had started this revolution. Now it would lead the charge that would change the galaxy forever. Communications Officer Emily Clark ripped off her headset, her face pale. Captain, I've decoded their transmissions. The Zaxian flagship isn't just coming to fight us. They're carrying their high command. They're here to make an example of us. The frontier hung in space, facing the massive Zaxian flagship. The Liberation fleet had scattered after taking heavy losses. Now humanity's battleships stood alone. The Zaxian vessel was enormous, 3 times the size of the frontier. Its hull bristled with weapons Earth had never seen before. But Emily had intercepted something more valuable than ship specs, their battle plans. They're going to broadcast our destruction across the galaxy, she told Captain Peterson. Show everyone what happens to species who dare to rebel. Peterson's jaw tightened. Send these decoded plans to Tactical. Mr. Chen, find me a weakness. The Zaxian flagship opened fire. New weapons tore into space itself, creating miniature black holes that threatened to swallow the frontier whole. Evasive maneuvers, Peterson ordered. The human battleship danced through space, barely avoiding the gravitational weapons. Chen studied the decoded plans frantically. Found it. Their main reactor, it's tied directly to their gravity weapons. If we can overload it, that would destroy half their fleet. Chief Martinez added from engineering. But we have to get close. Really close. Peterson nodded. Plot a course. Straight down their throat. The Frontier turned, facing the massive alien vessel head-on. Railguns fired, keeping the enemy's smaller ships at bay while they charge. They're powering up their main weapon, Emily warned. The gravity cannon could tear us apart. Reroute all power to forward shields, Peterson commanded. Engineering, prepare for quantum drive burst on my mark. The Zaxian flagship's bows split open, revealing a weapon that could shred planets. The Frontier kept charging. Now, Peterson shouted. The quantum drive exploded with power. The Frontier shot forward at impossible speed, straight into the charging gravity weapon. For a moment, space itself seemed to scream. Then they were past the weapon, inside the flagship's shields. Every rail gun on the Frontier opened fire at point-blank range, targeting the reactor Emily's decoded plans had revealed. The Zaxian flagship's core went critical. Explosions chained through its massive hull. Get us out of here, Peterson ordered. The Frontier's engines burned hot as they raced away from the exploding flagship. Behind them, the massive explosion took out half the Zaxian command fleet. Emergency transmissions filled Emily's console, Zaxian ships surrendering, others retreating in panic. The tide had turned. Send a message to all frequencies, Peterson said. Tell every imprisoned species, the Zaxians aren't invincible. Tell them it's time to break free. The Frontier had done the impossible. A single human ship had brought an empire to its knees. The galaxy would never be the same. Lieutenant John Rivera stood in the grand hall of the newly constructed Galactic Assembly, watching representatives from 100 species take their seats. The Frontier floated visible through the massive window behind him, a permanent monument to the day everything changed. After the fall of the Zaxian flagship, their empire had crumbled quickly. Centuries of oppression ended in weeks as imprisoned species broke free across the galaxy. The Zaxian Federation's leadership faced trial for their crimes against sentient beings. The Assembly will come to order, Rivera announced. As Earth's chosen diplomatic officer, he had the honor of organizing this historic meeting. Today we establish the Galactic Commonwealth, where all species stand as equals. The hall filled with beings of every form, crystalline Aldarians, energy form, Nexeri, metallic Voltarians, and dozens more. Even reformed Zaxian systems sent representatives, their new government having rejected their empire's destructive past. The human battleship changed everything, the Aldarian speaker said, not just by defeating the Zaxians, but by showing us we could work together. That different species could trust each other. Rivera nodded. The Frontier had become more than a ship. It was a symbol. Every major spaceport now had a model of Earth's first battleship, reminding everyone that chains could be broken. The Commonwealth's first act, Rivera announced, will be the dismantling of all remaining barrier systems. No species will ever be imprisoned again. Chief Engineer Martinez, now heading the Commonwealth's Technology Division, stepped forward. We've also begun sharing advances between species. Human kinetic weapons, Aldarian crystals, Nexeri phase technology. Together, we're stronger than any empire. The Assembly voted unanimously to establish the Commonwealth Charter. Its core principles were simple: freedom of movement between stars, sharing of knowledge, and mutual defense against any who would try to dominate others. Captain Peterson, now Admiral Peterson, gave the closing speech. The Zaxians thought humanity was too aggressive to join galactic society. They were right. We were too aggressive to accept chains, too aggressive to watch others suffer, too aggressive to let tyranny stand. She paused, looking at the assembled species. But that same spirit led us to fight not just for our freedom, but for everyone's. To build not just weapons, but alliances. To create not an empire, but a commonwealth of equals. The frontier's quantum drives hummed softly outside, still ready, still watching. Humanity had learned important lessons. Never accept imprisonment, never stop reaching for the stars, and never underestimate the power of working together. The galaxy had learned lessons too. Never judge a species by its age, never assume primitive means harmless, and never, ever try to cage humanity. A new age had begun, and it started because one human battleship had entered space, and the galaxy shook.